Good evening, and thank you for joining us. Our guest is Dr. Kent Mesplay. He is seeking the presidential nomination for the Green Party of the United States in the 2016 presidential race. Kent has actually run before in 2004, 2008, and 2012, and he is a retired air quality controller from San Diego County in California. He's also known as an advocate for indigenous rights and often known as Nice Guy Kent from the other past presidential nomination races. So we have the questions here, and I will go through these and then ask you one by one so you know what's coming up. Basically, introduce yourself, and then we'd like you to talk how you build the Green Party, bring in non-Green voters, policies on the economy, education, race, and justice. So we'll start with just introduce yourself and talk about what you do to build the Green Party, how you get non-voters or non-Greens to vote in your campaign.
Well, thank you for that kind introduction, Holly. Hi, my name is Kent Mesplay, and I'm running for president because of my tribal teachings. This is a time for us to unite and reconnect with our humanity and the planet which sustains all life. I know from my work in the field as an inspector that people are really hurting. The economy has not turned around, and people are quite desperate. I believe that we need good governance. We need a strong federal government, but one that has been transformed away from relying so heavily upon a war economy. And then the other side of things, I'm basically taking a two-track approach. One is that I believe that we need to improve our political situation. That's readily apparent. There's too much money in politics. It's corrupting our decision-making process. And then the other track is to encourage people to improve their local communities, to improve their emergency readiness, their resilience in the time of emergencies, whether manufactured by humanity or through climate change, which does have its anthropogenic causes. Our activities really have influenced the climate. I got into this because of my interest in indigenous people. I grew up with tribal people in the eastern highlands of Papua New Guinea, and I know that worldwide, people who live in traditional ways are really besieged. And they're besieged because the rest of us haven't really learned how to live sustainably. So when the United States and other countries learn to live within their means and to take better care of themselves without invading other lands, then we'll all be better off for it. We need a rapid transformation. Thank you.
So for your campaign, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but during your campaign, of course, you're going to be attracting Greens to vote for you. How would you draw non-Greens into the Green Party and into your campaign?
Well, that raises an interesting point regarding bringing in non-Greens. I'm interested in bringing in non-voters, not just non-Greens. Really, I look at my electorate as being those who are really ticked off with our system, who see that our government is so messed up that we need to hit the reset button. So in large part, I'm running as a protest candidate, not asking you to throw away your vote, but rather to vote for effective, meaningful change, which we have in the Green Party. The Green Party is the only viable alternative to the system that we currently have. One way to draw that in to get the media exposure that really would help an alternative presidential candidacy take off is the choice of running mate. And I've been talking with a Hollywood celebrity. We've been discussing that she would run as my running mate, and that's close to being finalized. So I anticipate having more publicity for this campaign and to really be a voice for Native people here in this country, for Native Americans, American Indians, Indigenous, or Native. People refer to themselves in different ways. But the real focus, though, is that when we live sustainably, we're better off. We're more prepared for emergencies. We're not going to be using up things as quickly as we do because quite frankly, live in a throwaway society where there's planned obsolescence, where we use things up and discard them. And that's a non-green way to live, and it's not one that is respectful for future generations.
So who is the candidate? Who's the VP candidate? You're not going to tell.
I'm not ready to announce yet, but I anticipate that within the next 2 weeks I'll be able to do that.
That's going to have everybody guessing now, I'm sure. So let's get into policy. You've been asked about your views on the economy.
Well, one important point to make regarding our monetary system is that our money is based on debt. We need to get away from debt-based currency and into credit-based monetary system. We need public banking. We need banks that work for the people, and we need to reduce the power of the Federal Reserve to end the Fed. We're losing too much of our money just paying off the interest on the Fed, which is not a public entity, it's a private enterprise. The real problem throughout our system is that, well, quite frankly, that there's too much of an expectation on the part of not just those who really run the system, but also upon even the average citizen. Too much of an expectation of that we are. Could we start this again?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, actually, if you want, we could. Would you want to start the entire thing over?
Well, he did really good at the very beginning, and then he got tripped up.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah. If it's editable, and just stop where he got tripped off, and then he can start back up right now.
Yeah, and if not, Craig's.
Begin this segment. Or just, yeah. Let's begin this segment again, the economic segment. I haven't asked you the question.
Okay, so you've been asked about your views on economics.
Our monetary system is based on debt. We need to get away from that into a monetary system that is based on credit. The Federal Reserve is not a public entity, it's a private enterprise. When we move toward a credit-based monetary system, we'll be reducing the power of the Fed, which basically is taking our money and that's paying down the interest on the Federal Reserve. So it's difficult for our country to get out of debt in the current system. We need public banks. We need a basic income for people, which means that every citizen would have a basic amount of money coming in. That would actually stimulate the economy. It would also do away with bureaucratic oversight in that there would be fewer hoops for people to jump through when they need to get their basic needs met. That would be a good basis. In addition to this, we need people to be more self-sufficient and to have stronger local economies, which means that we need policies and procedures that are more respectful of local solutions, such as local currency or scrip, trade and barter. These other ways that people are already using, but there needs to be a formal recognition of that and a way to support this, because it's important and it's how people are basically surviving. I've seen in the field during my 14 years as an air quality inspector, people trying different ways to keep their companies afloat. But the real problem in our society with our basic economy is that we're based on consumption, on using things up and throwing things away. And it's a difficult sell to any entity that is pushing product to talk about demand reduction, to say, well, you know, we're going to change the system, but you're going to sell fewer of your widgets or services or what have you. But the way to do this is to do it rather quickly, but gradually, and transition to a shorter work week and to picking up the slack by people having access to community gardens, growing more of their own food, having a more distributed energy generation system. We can create millions of new jobs just in retrofitting buildings to be more energy efficient. If you're going to improve something in terms of energy, the first step is always to improve the energy efficiency. So basically what we're going to end up with is a more resilient society where people are better able to take care of themselves and look after their neighbors, and to have that that built-in strength that serves us well during times of emergency, during whether it's long-term drought or war on our soil or what have you. So we do need a strong federal government, and we need changes to economic policy, again, to move more toward a credit-based system. But we also need to not forget that it really is up to people in their local communities to strengthen the way they do things and grow more of their own food.
Great. Thank you. Very interesting. Next is the policy and view on education.
Well, people who've studied the history of schools and how our schools are set up have noted that schools actually look rather like the factories. The schools are largely designed, education is designed to create people who are there to support what used to be largely a manufacturing system. I do think that in this day and age, what with the internet and other ways of communicating, we can move away from this traditional factory type school system into one that allows people to take more creative approaches. I was homeschooled. I was out in the bush for the first 10 years of my life, and my mother was my teacher for the first 3 of those years. She'd send the lessons when I'd complete a packet, send it to Australia, and then we'd receive the next lesson. I'm proud of my education. I really believe that that education should be freely available at all levels to everyone who wants to improve themselves by educating themselves. It would boost self-esteem, and it's really good for us all, for people to be all that they can be via their education. With people living longer too, it's the case that people change their careers throughout life, maybe 2 or 3 times. So our educational system ought to address that. But plus, we really need to be teaching the basics, to teach people how to take care of their own communities, to grow their own food, to do some of these things which are thought of as being more, say, lowbrow, but they're essential skills, and they really need to be taught.
Thank you. And finally, your views on the race and justice issues in the United States.
We have a long way to go. I know that Green Party leaders have a strong track record of speaking out on social justice issues. And I'm, of course, very interested in the environment because I grew up in a rainforest. But for me, the social justice end comes from being with tribal people early on and respecting their way of life. And then with my Native American ancestry, which is very important to me, I would like to inspire other people who have Native ancestry to seek out higher education. I believe that humanity is essentially one race with a lot of differences, a lot of diversity in that race. But if we use race as we commonly apply it, which primarily refers to skin tone, we have a long way to go here in the US. The problems that we're having, that Black Lives Matter, for example, has been bringing to the forefront, for example, inappropriate police behavior. This is something that I would have liked to have thought we'd have done away with ages ago. We need to dismantle institutions of oppression. and to reinvigorate local communities. I think in terms of policing, the cop on the beat, the person who walks and knows the community and knows young people by their first name is really the right model, because there's more of a personal connection. But right now, with our extreme Orwellian national security apparatus, there are walls that are springing up between us at different levels, and we need to break down those walls. We need to come together in our common humanity and improve our race relations, and, especially regarding Native Americans and how they've been mistreated over generations. I'm giving voice to that in this campaign.
Thank you, Kent. So you have just a little bit of time in closing. Do you have some remarks you want to make, issues you want to touch on, or any other final message? Your song that you plan to play in your inauguration?
Yeah, thanks. Well, one suggestion to me was Rammstein's "America," which basically speaks to the long arm of the American empire, how we're basically trampling all over the globe under the auspices of bringing a better way of life to people. But it's really about pushing the corporate agenda, and it's harmful, and we need to do away with that. I have other song ideas as well, and we'll be exploring those. I do want to say that climate change is a serious issue. This is something that I've been talking about since 2003. And my hope is that this combined threat will bring humanity together in a way that we have never been unified before. So as we gradually demilitarize ourselves and the planet, we can retool, we can transform the military into being an institution that really does protect us. I'm not talking about just slashing military jobs, but rather transforming that type of work into another agency, almost another branch of the military, but one that is focused on meeting the challenges of climate change. And the thing is, when we live more sustainably too, we're not only mitigating the effects of climate change, but we're making ourselves more secure in the event of more climate chaos. So a vote for me is a vote to end colonialism. I grew up overseas, and I'm familiar, because of my international background, with how other people see the United States. I think I have a much clearer view of this than our, for example, Republican lineup, the sad clown posse, for example, of the Republican Party, which seems to be clueless as to international relations. Even the leading progressive Democrat too really falls short in terms of international affairs. And for me to have been born and raised overseas, I am a natural born citizen. Both my parents were US citizens at the time of my birth. For me to see all of this really gives me a strength that few candidates have. And I look forward to inspiring people to get out there, to register green, and to vote Mesplay. I do intend to be the Green Party's nominee, and I know that most of the other Green Party nominees, as of the time of this recording, are just ramping up their campaigns as well. And I think as we broaden the base within the Green Party, this will strengthen us all, and then we'll unite behind our nominee for the fall in the general election. So I think this will be one of the more interesting presidential elections yet in the Green Party, and I'm grateful to you for having me on. And again, I'm telling everyone I can, register green and vote Mesplay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kent Mesplay, and best wishes with your campaign. Have a good evening.
Thanks. You too.